Hi, thank you, Cindy Ev. It wouldn't be a virtual meeting without somebody forgetting to unmute. Welcome, everyone, to our second panel with our senior trade commissioners located in our missions across the European Union. My name is Sarah Wilshaw. As Cindy Ev introduced me, I am the newly appointed Chief Trade Commissioner of Canada. And that makes me particularly proud to have this opportunity to be able to moderate the second panel. And it is a great way for me to showcase the expertise of some of my fantastic colleagues and their teams in the EU. Our trade commissioners keep a very close eye on opportunities in EU markets, and I'm really excited to have three of our senior trade commissioners here today to tell us more. The first panel focused on Northern Europe, and I hope you all found that really inspiring. This one will cover key Southern European markets to give you an overall picture of some of the EU's most promising areas of opportunity. So, as you may know, the Trade Commissioner Service helps Canadian businesses grow by connecting them with funding and support programs, international opportunities, and a network of trade commissioners in more than 160 cities around the world, which cover all of CETA's markets. Senior Trade Commissioners, or as we call them, STCs, we like our acronyms, manage our trade teams on the grounds in the ground in these markets, and as such have very valuable insights on the particulars of the market, what the opportunities are, and also what challenges they may present. This format will be very similar to the previous panel, and our objective is to make sure that you walk away with some key insights and intelligence on some of Southern Europe's most promising markets, tips on how to do business there, and perhaps look a little bit at how COVID might have affected these factors also since March. We'll start by hearing from each of our panelists about their markets and what to look for, and then we'll have a short discussion. So, some of our panelists will be presenting in French, but we have simultaneous translation for English speakers. So, if you make sure to adjust your sound and audio to the right channel. So, here are our panelists for today. We have first up Karen Kennedy, who is our Senior Trade Commissioner in Madrid, who will also cover Portugal. Nicolas Lepage is our STC in Paris, and Edith Saint-Hilaire is our STC in Rome, covering the Italian market. So let's start with you, Karen. What can you tell us about the Spanish and Portuguese markets? And give us a quick pitch about the markets you cover. 5 minutes max.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for putting this together. I'm happy to go first. I'm a little nervous to go first, and I'm definitely nervous about the 5 minutes. So we'll see how I do. Could I have the first slide, please? I'm not even sure where to see the slide. All right. So you see that Spain and Portugal are down there in the middle of the ocean there, sort of outliers. Our team in Spain is located both in Madrid and in Barcelona. We have Canadian and locally engaged staff in Madrid and Barcelona, and Portugal, the mission is located in Lisbon. So let's start with the stat slide on Spain, please. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going into these stats. I think you have them there in front of you. I'm just going to choose a few things that I think are interesting, certainly in the interest of those 5 minutes. You'll see there that Spain has a population of about 47 million people. What's not on there is that Spain also has 70 to 80 million tourists a year. And in the mission, we really consider that sort of like a secondary market because of all those extra consumers coming in. That's more than France, Nicolas. Spain ratified CETA in 2017, December 2017. That was the first large EU economy to ratify. We're very, very proud of that. Since then, bilateral merchandise trade has grown 20% between Canada and Spain, thanks to CETA. That's great, great stat. If you look on the slide, you'll see those CETA growth numbers, and that is something that I just want to draw your attention to. 1,300% growth in those pallets, 550% growth in vending machines, 480% growth in bicycles. Those numbers are crazy, and that's thanks to the trade agreement. The Spanish really take that seriously. It's been a real boon for us here. I'm going to focus on that bicycles number one more time, just to say that a Canadian company out of Quebec, out of Longueuil, Quebec, PBSC, has had a wonderful success in Barcelona with their Spanish partner. They won the government procurement bid, and now they supply all of the bike sharing services in Barcelona. So if you go to Barcelona, you're going to see these red Canadian bicycles all over the place. It's really amazing. just last week, PBSC announced they had another success in Spain in San Sebastian. So you're going to see Canadian bicycles in San Sebastian soon. Like, these are just great stories. I think those bicycle stats are going to stay way up there again. And it underscores the good successes we're having in government procurement opportunities in Spain as well. Let's go to the next slide on Portugal, please. Again, I am not going to stay very long on the statistics, but I will say that like Spain, Portugal ratified in December 2017, another pro-trade early ratifier. You heard a little bit about that in the Northern Europe panel too. With the Nordics, Spain and Portugal are very pro-trade, very open to trade. And another thing about Portugal, you're going to see again those bottom line numbers, really, really impressive percentage growth post CETA entry into force. And interestingly, in Portugal, services trade, bilateral services imports from Canada have grown 65% since 2016. That's a really impressive growth in services especially. And that's all I'm going to say on the statistics, because otherwise I'll go on and on. So let's go to the next slide on market opportunities, please. When Sarah asked us to choose just 3 sectors for market opportunities, I thought that was like choosing one of my children over the other child, because there are so many awesome opportunities in Spain and Portugal. It's really tough to choose. Since I was forced to choose, I kind of crammed 3 into the first one. So technically I've got 5 in there. But I went with clean tech, energy, and ICT first. And partly I chose that because this is going to be a clear area of focus, not just for Spain, but also for the EU in general. There's going to be a lot of investment in the next several years. It's a good bet for Canada because of the extraordinary technology companies we have working in those sectors, because of our deep knowledge in the energy sector. Spain's going to be a leader in the EU's push to develop new clean technologies in the coming years, as well as more sustainable ways of sourcing and producing energy. There's going to be a lot of investment in digitalization, green economy, sustainability, and we're very active in that sector. Life sciences is up there too. Life sciences is a big sector for us. It continues to grow. There's opportunities in life sciences in Spain in licensing opportunities, co-development, commercialization, R&D, tech transfer, sort of across the board. And it's been very active over the last little while during the COVID crisis. And we've been trying to source opportunities for Canadian clients, and also sort of get into the public health crisis aspect of it, which has been really exciting. Very, very interesting stuff going on in life sciences. And I can't not mention agriculture and agri-food. It has been a big CETA winner, especially in Spain. We think there's a lot of market opportunities for our products. We're currently working on a major initiative that aims to connect European importers with Canadian agri-food products with other importers and distributors across the EU. That's going to be really exciting. And I have to mention my pet project, Canadian beef. This weekend, I'm going to be going to the store. I'm going to be, for the first time, buying Alberta beef to put on my supper table. I'm very proud of that, because we negotiated the market access, of course, and now we're trying to make it real for exporters. And I think earlier in this panel, early today, I guess, you heard a couple of different Canadian companies talk about Spain. You heard an agriculture company, Biscay. You heard Rackham talking about clean tech and solar. So really, really interesting stuff going on there. Portugal, we have, again, in ICT, agri-food, we've got aerospace up there. My colleague Anne-Marie in Portugal would want me to tell you that they are shifting from aerospace a little bit, because aerospace has really suffered under COVID, and they're shifting to clean tech. Again, for many of the reasons I just mentioned, the EU is going to be investing a lot. Portugal is going to be investing in clean tech. Information and communication technologies in Portugal, you'll be familiar probably with Web Summit. If you're in the ICT sector, it takes place there every year in Lisbon. Web Summit is also organized by the same folks that brought Collision to Toronto. And in agri-food, we actually work very closely with Portugal to sort of advance those opportunities, some similar market opportunities. And again, Biscay, the company that was on earlier, talked about selling into the Portuguese market. Can we have the next slide, please? Why should you do business in Spain? I think I've given you a lot of reasons on these slides about why you should do business in Spain. There are going to be significant opportunities in the next few years, a lot of investment, areas of digitalization, greening the economy, sustainability. I personally think this is really the time to be in Europe, and we think that Spain should be your gateway to Europe. And what I want to really highlight for you and underline for you here, is that I know that Spain is not normally your first thought when you think about Europe, and I think it should be. Spanish are very open, even eager to do business with Canadians. We have a very good reputation here, but it's virtually an untapped market for us. And I think that not only could Spain be your gateway to Europe, but it could be your gateway to Latin America through triangulation opportunities. Of course, there are risks. I think that I was very honest about the risks here, unlike some of my colleagues in Northern Europe, perhaps. People do complain about the bureaucratic processes here. I think, frankly, if you can deal with the bureaucracy in any other country, you can deal with the bureaucracy in Spain. It's just paperwork. And in terms of regulation, Canada and Spain, we share the same objectives for that regulation. It's consumer protection, it's safety, health and safety. So, it all makes sense, and you'll find that. And then, of course, as many of my colleagues have mentioned, we can help you. We can facilitate by connecting you to people in the local market who can support you. Next slide, please, on Portugal. Why Portugal? What I love about Portugal is I love the size of Portugal for a new exporter to the EU. I think that one of the things we say about Canada when people are looking at North America is it's a moderately sized economy, and it's a good gateway, and it's a good way to get your toes wet. And I think the same is true of Portugal. It's a smaller economy, still dynamic, still innovative, and it's a great way to enter the European market. The Portuguese government is also planning large investments over the next decade in digitalization and green tech. I'm probably past my 5 minutes now. Again, there's still some risks. It's a very developed country, though, so the risks, I think, are less significant than they might be in other places. So if you're keen on Portugal, though, let me know, and I'll connect you with the amazing trade team that know a lot more about it than I do. I'm going to finish up by talking a little bit about COVID. So can we do COVID Spain, please? As my colleagues have mentioned, many of my colleagues have mentioned, COVID is making people in Portugal and Spain rethink the way they do business, rethink their business strategies, maybe look for new partnerships. Like everywhere, Spain was very severely affected by COVID. We were hit very early in Spain, and we had some of the most restrictive lockdowns, most restrictive measures in the world. On the bright side, the government is supporting industry through it. Spain has issued over 100 billion euros of state-backed loans to support businesses, and they're planning on front-loading their allocation of the European Recovery Package, 72 billion. They're going to front-load that through 2021, 2023. 37% of the funds are going to go to green investment, 12% to specific environmental projects, 33% towards digital transformation. So they are, those are the right things that they should be doing. And I think that it's going to make a new economy, really. It's going to modernize the Spanish economy going forward. Next slide on COVID Portugal, please. Again, COVID hit them hard, especially in retail, consumer goods, and tourism. The good news is they're expecting the GDP to rebound 5.5% in 2021 and 3.5% in 2022. And they're also supporting their industries through this. They're issuing $13 billion in state-backed credit lines for SMEs and tax break programs, and they're providing additional support to their most affected sectors in their economy. And like Spain, they're going to get some help from the EU as well, 26 billion euros from the bailout package. So I think that is actually it for my presentation. Maybe I did do it in 5 minutes. Let me end by saying that I have a really incredible team. I have the best team. I know that the French and the Italians are going to say that they have the best team, but really I have the best team in Southern Europe. And they're going to be on those sector panels on Friday that everybody's been mentioning. So I invite you to come and talk to them about real market opportunities, and come see me in the Spain table on Friday, and we'll be happy to talk about it. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to say that the 5 minutes may be a little bit flexible, but it's okay. I think you were covering the two markets on the Iberian Peninsula in a really comprehensive way, and so that was great. I want our audience to also note the competitive spirit here that Karen put out there already. I think that's great. This is how our senior trade commissioners and our trade teams are in the field, very competitive, and they want you to be competitive too. So I think that's pretty good. She's thrown thrown the gauntlet down for her colleagues. So now let's take a look at the EU's second largest market, France. Nicolas, over to you. What can you tell us about l'Hexagone?
Merci, bonsoir Sarah. Très content d'être avec vous. So I'll switch to English for the presentation. Obviously, we're into competitive mode tonight, but we'll try to make it quicker to talk a little bit about France. France is a market of 67 million people and consumer with significant purchasing power. And that's one of the key elements to understand about the French market. Of course, Canada enjoys a strong bilateral relationship with France, not just in terms of trade, but also in terms of innovation, investment, and a very strong historical relationship on the political and cultural side. France is Canada's ninth global trading partner, second to the EU. We have over or close to now $13 billion of bilateral trade, Canadian exports of about $4 billion. Even during the first 9 months of 2020 under the pandemic, our exports to France continued to grow by 7% compared to 2019. The French market is not just about exporting goods, it's also about services. The Canadian-French relationship is extremely important on the services side. France is Canada's fourth largest partner globally in terms of services, second in Europe, about $4.5 billion of services exported from Canada to France. And Canada is a net exporter of services to France. Relationship is also about investment. So not just French investment to Canada, which is about representing 1,250 French subsidiaries in Canada. Most of the large French groups are present, but it's also about Canadian having a presence in France. We have about 200 Canadian subsidiaries on the French territory across a number of sectors. Karen was mentioning about Spain being a gateway to the EU. I would argue that with all the direct links that we have from port to air to the people-to-people connection to the trade, the investment, the innovation, most probably France is the best gateway to the EU for Canadian exporter. Since CETA came into force 3 years ago, two-way merchandise trade increased by 35%, with Canadian exports increasing by 6%. On the slide, you see some of the key sectors or products that have shown great increase over the last few years. What is important about those products is that many of those Canadian companies were not present before CETA came into force. And now in some of those sectors, Canadian exports have up to 20-25% of the market shares for those products. So this is really CETA at work. So next slide, please. So we see opportunities in a number of sectors. Like Karen mentioned, we had to pick. So we're from France, so we really stick and obey by the rules. So we picked 3. The entire digital sector is one that is extremely important for the relationship and where we see a lot of opportunities. France has, of course, a great innovation and IT ecosystem. Number of companies, large groups are going through digital transformation, modernization of those companies. So that offers a number of opportunities for companies that provide cloud-based solutions or software as a service solutions. E-commerce is also a very strong area of interest and focus. We see sales of over $100 billion and increasing on different e-commerce platform. So for companies that needs to find ways to get their product to the market, e-commerce is very interesting tool to use, but at the same time for companies that are providing services or platform, again, it's a very interesting play. AI is a strong part of the relationship between Canada and France. So obviously we see lots of interactions in that. On the digital sector, we also see all the technologies related to tech for good, the ag tech, the health tech, the green tech. So all those other sectors are very much interesting for companies that have solutions that can play in the market space. Clean tech, from renewable to sustainable mobility, again, around technologies or services. We see a growing interest in France for hydrogen-related technologies, and that's an area that we put a lot of focus, again, on the technology or services side. What we often see on the clean tech side is niche technologies that will fit or be integrated in a larger solution, or a solution that is brought and carried by a larger multinational, French multinational. So we would see often companies playing and providing those niche technologies. Agri-food, consumer products, other areas where CETA had a very strong impact. Jewelries, for example, 4% reduction in tariffs. So obviously, all the design and fashion sector in Canada have used that. Gourmet food, fish and seafood, organic. These are all other areas around the agri-food product. Also, often forgotten are some of the overseas territories. Martinique, Guadeloupe, Saint-Martin, they are French overseas departments. CETA is also into force in those places. So it's our mission in Bridgetown, Barbados. I don't have the pleasure of traveling to those places, but our colleagues in Barbados can also help you. Those are markets of proximity. Those are markets that offer opportunities on clean tech, infrastructure, food product. So next slide, please. So I've decided to not necessarily say why France is a great market for Canadian companies, why France is good for SMEs, for larger groups, not just for companies from one province in particular. We see companies from across Canada, from coast to coast to coast, being active on the French market. French market is a market where competition is fierce, where you need to come with a strong value proposition. At the same time, companies that have that strong value proposition, that unique selling point, and they have the patience and they have a strategy to enter the market, are normally very successful in France. So from the success in France, then you can go to Spain, Portugal, Italy, and other EU markets. France is your entry point. Next slide, please. So just a few points on the COVID-19 situation. It's very similar to Canada. France was very quick in developing a number of different programs for individual and businesses. They have developed a number of sectoral plans, like for the aerospace sector with a plan of 15 billion euros, the automotive sector with a plan of 8 billion euros, and a number of other plans. 2020 will be a recession year, expected to be around minus 11%. We all know that. What is important is the years ahead of us. Next year, France is expected to grow by 6%. And again, this will offer us a number of opportunities for Canadian companies to re-engage on the market. There's also an economic recovery plan called France Relance, 100 billion euros that were put to support ecological transition, competitiveness, and some more domestic opportunities. And what is important in that plan is that there was also a national strategy for hydrogen plan that was provided with 7 billion euros over the next 10 years. France is very keen in developing its hydrogen sector, and in Canada, that's something that we have. We have technologies, we have services, and that's an area that we can continue to build collaboration on the trade, on the innovation, and on the investment side. In France, we're extremely fortunate. We have a team of 25 trade commissioners and trade commissioners' assistants. We are here to support you. We are waiting here to provide you services. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nicolas. That was great, and certainly we can see that patience and having a strong value proposition is key, actually, in many markets. So I think that that's a key difference in the European markets for sure. So thanks for that, and for outlining some of those really exciting opportunities. Again, when thinking about Southern Europe, I think it's hard to avoid thinking about Italy. I will say we have had some difficulty connecting with Edith. She's there now, but just bear with us. Hopefully the connection stays throughout her presentation, because I think she's got some really great things to add. But Edith, from Rome, do all roads lead to Rome for exporters as well as everyone else? Oh, Edith, I think you may be on mute.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, c'est clair.
Yes, so you can hear me. I had to change a computer and I changed room as well, so hopefully it will work. But I don't want to take a chance, so I will just turn off the camera. Maybe it will help with the connection as well. And to respond to your question, yes, all the road lead to Rome, and I will explain why. Maybe first, I would just like to say a few words on the team. We are located in Rome. I have a team of 10 trade commissioners, very experienced trade commissioner. I am very, very fortunate. And we also cover the markets of Malta, San Marino, and Albania. But tonight, I would like just to talk about Italy. So if I can have the first slide, please. In terms of the Italian market, you can see that the GDP is of $2.65 trillion and the population is just over 60 million people. And a fact that is very important is that Italy is Canada's second most important trading partner in the EU. So very important for the Canadian businesses. And we see here the numbers for imports from Canada for goods and for services, 2.6 billion for goods and almost 1 billion in services. And you also can see some examples of products which had a high growth of imports since the entry into force of CETA, and also the top 3 merchandise import from Canada. Next slide, please. I haven't, unfortunately, heard a lot of the other presentation before me, but I heard Karen saying that it was difficult to choose sectors, and it was the same thing for me, because there are several sectors. We cover several priority sectors in Italy. I should say that the market is very sophisticated, and as it is the case for the other markets in Europe, it's important to come well prepared, to take the time to have a good plan, And in Italy as well, the time to build your relationship with people here. So the first sector, life science. Italy is the first manufacturer of pharmaceuticals in Europe with a production of $52 billion per year. Italy is also known for its research centers with a national network of several scientific parks and has 16 national research centers that are focused only on life sciences. Italy is also a global leader for research and manufacturing of vaccines, and including the work on 2 vaccines on COVID-19. With respect to clean tech, we see a lot of opportunities in this sector. Italy is the first for circular economy performance in Europe. And the sector includes manufacturing activities based on recycled materials, such as packaging. And in fact, Italy's recycling rate is more than double the European average. Sustainable energy management. This sector includes ambitious plans for sustainability, for sustainable mobility, electrification, and use of smart technologies for sustainable buildings, utilities, and grids. And with respect to the water and wastewater management, the Italian national water network is not very efficient. It is actually estimated that over 22% of the water that enters the system is lost during the distribution, and therefore there's a lot of opportunity in this sector for Canadian companies. We also chose the advanced manufacturing technology. It's very broad. I just will give you a few examples. In February 2017, the Italian government launched the Industry 4.0 national plan with the aim of boosting investment in new technologies and enhance digitalization of the manufacturing industry. You see here the aerospace industry, that is the 4th in Europe. Italy is also a major automotive player with more than 250,000 employees and a turnover of 93 billion euros. And Italy's packaging industry ranks first globally in terms of revenues alongside Germany. And actually more than half of the automatic packaging machinery sold worldwide is either Italian or German. Italy is also growing in the AI ecosystem. And again, we could have mentioned many, many other sectors. I heard other posts talking about e-commerce, about fintech, Italy as well. There's opportunities in cybersecurity as well. Next page, please. In terms of why coming to Italy to do business. Again, yes, all roads lead to Rome. Being located in the center of the Mediterranean Sea, Italy is a strategic hub, not only for the European market, but also for North African and Middle East markets. Italy is the 2nd largest manufacturing country in Europe after Germany. It's something that maybe people don't always think about. So very strong again in the manufacturing sector. And the sector includes large multinationals with extensive global presence, but also large number of dynamic, flexible, and specialized SMEs. Business can also find opportunities in several high-tech sectors with a range of government incentives, depending on the region and the sector. Again, it's important to do the research before to decide exactly where to go, and we are there to help in the decision. And I didn't put it there, but Italy is known also for its tradition of innovation. It spends over 25 billion euros per year in R&D and has a very strong network of incubators and science and technology parks, which are connected to universities and local development agencies. In terms of challenges, slow contracts enforcement, the filing and process of commercial lawsuits can be quite long. Italy's corporate tax burden is one of the heaviest in Europe. And also the bureaucracy can be heavy, and it's important to have a good grasp of local laws, regulation, and business practices before entering the system. And again, we're there to help. With respect to COVID, Italy was and is still still hit hard by COVID. The numbers of new cases are starting to slow down a little bit every day, but still very, very high. Today, there was again 20,000 new cases, so it's still very, very high. And the Italian economy is expected to decrease by at least 9% in 2020. And the sectors that are the most affected are tourism, which is important because this sector contributes to 13% of the GDP, and also aerospace. But that being said, we also see strong signs of economic resilience, and particularly with respect to industry, the industrial production. With respect to the recovery, Italy will receive over 200 billion euros in funding from the EU, with the Next Generation EU, the funding to help the recovery after COVID. And the Italian government has a new investment plan to relaunch the Italian economy that is called Italia 2020-2022. And to this effect has identified 6 main areas, which include digitalization, innovation, and competitiveness of the manufacturing system. So I was talking about Industry 4.0. Again, there will be more fund in the manufacturing sector, but also for digitalization and innovation. Green revolution, which include electric mobility, circular economy, urban regeneration. So several opportunities in the clean tech sector. Health, including e-health and support for research and medicine. And also in education, research, and culture. And this will include energy efficient refurbishing of school buildings, development of e-learning tools, and also new digital tools for the cultural industry and cultural heritage. So this concludes my presentation, and I hope that the businesses will come and meet Friday night. If you have more questions, we will be happy to answer them and to work with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Edith. I'm so glad we were able to get you reconnected, and that was an excellent way to finish the first part of our panel. So thanks to you all. Really exciting opportunities in all of these countries. And for our audience, you can see how our teams are fighting for your business. They really want to help you, and they are excited to learn more about you and how they can do that. So let's dig a little deeper. Let's get some questions going here. I know that resilience is on everybody's mind right now, and recovery, of course. And the answer usually, involves some thought about trade diversification. It certainly does for us. I know that this is on the minister's mind, and she was speaking about it earlier today. And of course, evidence does show us that companies exporting to more than one place are more resilient, since they can distribute their risk over multiple markets. So, and I've served in a lot of markets around the world too, as have these very experienced senior trade commissioners. So we can talk, I think, quite a bit about what that looks like on the ground. But let me ask the panel here. If I'm a Canadian company who primarily exports within North America, why should I be thinking about your markets to grow my business? And let's start with Karen. What do you think the answer? I'd say why not, but you tell me.
I like why not. I actually think you already said it, Sarah, is diversification. So if you're exporting to other North American markets, it means you have an interesting and competitive solution already. You already have the internal capacity to handle international operations. Now it's time to diversify. One of my colleagues earlier today said, why would you put all your eggs in one basket? I think that's a Spanish way of saying diversify too. So Europe is our second biggest trading partner. It's a market with tremendous purchasing power. With CETA in place, EU expansion is a natural next step. And within the EU, obviously I'm biased, but I think Spain is sort of the perfect entry point. I know that Nicolas said France was a great gateway, but that's only a good gateway if you're driving from Spain to Belgium, really. So Spain is the gateway I think that you need to focus on. The Spanish market's not yet saturated with international companies. I think in 2019, Spain was 12th in terms of foreign investment into Spain. It tells you that Spain is an open, dynamic, open to trade, and there's space for new players. And then, of course, once you meet the standards in Spain, you're good for the rest of Europe. So that's a quick answer, but I know that probably Nicolas and Edith want to take me on the Spain as a gateway to Europe.
Have you got a rejoinder there, Nicolas?
Yeah, of course, I will say that obviously the first reason is that France is the gateway to the EU. But besides that point, if you're exporting already to the US, it means that you have competitive products, services for the US market. So there's no reason that you would not be able to be competitive on the European market. Plus, if your competition is a US company in Europe, they don't have CETA. They have tariffs that you don't have. That's a significant advantage to enter the EU market. Once you have entered a country, being Italy, France, or even Spain or Portugal, you can then from there continue to go to other markets, to continue to develop, to build your network, your relationship. It doesn't end after one country. Yes, they are all different in a sense that they have all their local, regional specifics. But once you're in the EU, you can multiply those successes into different markets. The EU is not just a market for large Canadian companies, it's a market for SMEs. And that's what we are seeing in large or smaller markets in the EU. In France, most of the clients we're working with are SMEs. The EU is a market for SMEs.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, Nicolas. Really good points there. Edith, I'm not sure. I hope you're still able to hear and that we're able to hear you too. Do you want to add anything to this conversation?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I would say basically what Karen and Nicolas have said with respect to why to come to Europe and why to come to our specific markets. Maybe on Italy, if I can add, and I said it's a hub, so I guess that many of our our countries are hub. There are so many opportunities. The north of Italy is maybe one of the strongest economy of Europe, and particularly the region, the Lombardy region, and there are several sectors. So it's very, very interesting for the companies. And what I would add as well in terms of why Italy, I think there's a very good relationship between Canada and Italy. There's a big community, Italian community in Canada. There's when we talk with people, the business people, often they know someone in Canada or they're studied in Canada. And I find that there this openness in doing business with Canada. So that might be an additional reason as well to choose Italy, because I think that people are waiting with open arms.
That's a really good point too. If I may add one point too, if you are doing business in North America, hopefully you are working with your trade commissioners in whichever markets you are currently operating in. They would be more than happy to help connect you to the markets in Europe as well. And so ask them wherever you are, they'll happily connect you, just as the folks on this panel will happily connect you to any other markets in Europe, of course, after you've explored the ones they're in. So whether that's the hub or the gateway, either way, come on into Europe. That's the bottom line here. But let's look at some of the let's look at some of the challenges, and you all spoke about some of the challenges, and having a sort of a tolerance for risk as well, and the CETA agreements and all our FTAs are there to reduce the level of risk, and so are our partners. And I know we have some great partners that we work with at EDC and CCC and other places where they're there to help lower the risk. That is the job as well of our trade commissioners and the kind of advice that they can give you. We want people to avoid making mistakes, so come talk to us beforehand. But let's talk about those common mistakes. that Canadian companies can avoid when they're starting off. So let's start with Nicolas this time.
Um, Maybe to be just quick on that one, I would say the most common mistake that we see is that companies would underestimate the amount of homework required before getting into our market, into the EU, and maybe even more so in this virtual environment that we are. It's a great opportunity that we can do business virtually to connect with new potential clients, partners, but still, companies need to do their homework to understand who they are talking to. It's not because it's through a virtual platform that homeworks don't need to be done beforehand. That's, I think, one of the key mistakes, and will maybe in the months to come, people will realize that this is like doing business like normal. This is the new way. Companies need to do their business. The other one I would just add, and you touch on that, is what says the ignorance of available resources. And do talk to us. We have, of course, our teams and network on the ground, but also in Canada. You alluded to EDC, BDC programs like CanExport to support companies that wants to come and see us virtually and physically one day. But those programs are there, so don't ignore those government programs that are there to support you.
So use the resources and tools available, and definitely do your homework. Anybody want to add to that, Karen or Edith?
I can just quickly, I mean, I was going to say the same thing about doing your homework and maybe not making assumptions about the market. And then, you know, I listened to the Northern Europe panel and I listened to Nicolas, and I do want to just clarify that most of the companies that work with us are doing their homework because there's a feedback with us. And so we'll suggest something and they'll ask questions. And if I don't know the answer, I'll call Nicolas and he'll know the answer. So, you know, usually when people are coming to us, if you say, you know, do your homework, as most of us have already said, and I was going to say, it sounds like there's lots of mistakes. I think there's far fewer mistakes than there would otherwise be when people work with us. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
No, that's a great addition, and also you've just made it clear that it's not just competitive between your offices. There's a lot of cooperation in the European team as well. So thanks for underlining that. Edith, anything you want to add to this?
Actually, I was going to say exactly the same thing about having a strategy and homework and come to us to have information. I would maybe add as well to realize that sometimes it may take more time than they expect, so they need to be patient and to know the rules. For example, in Italy, sometimes it may be longer to be paid. Doesn't mean that they won't be paid, but it's important to know. So it helps as well not to have too many headaches once they are in the market, to know what is really the business. How the business works. So, but like the others, like my colleagues, really homework and come to see us to have information and even vet some of the companies they want to deal with. We can help them with that.
Oh, that's super helpful. Thank you. Yeah, and I think that you know, we're coming up on the end of the time here, but we have a big audience, and I want to take at least one question from the audience. So I have a good one here that I think could perhaps be answered fairly quickly by each of you, but we'll start with Edith. Is there something in particular just about and you mentioned some of these, Edith, in terms of the time it takes to develop the relationships or perhaps see execution on certain contracts. What nuances in terms of business culture should people be aware of, you know, when they're seeking out commercial ties? Of course, doing business in Europe is not doing business in the United States or Canada. It's very different. So what would you say if there's one or two quick things that you could mention about business culture in your market, and then we'll go to the other two.
You mentioned relationship, and I think that to build a relationship is true everywhere, but it's particularly important here in Italy. It's the business is a matter of relationship, and you need to demonstrate that you are willing to take the time to do it. So it takes time. It's done over sometimes meals. It's done, I know now with the virtual meetings, it's more difficult, but still you need to show that you want to make the effort. In Italy, maybe one of the things as well that is that we see a lot is that there are still several family-owned business, and the decision is often taken by the owner. So it's important to know that and it's there's a hierarchy as well. It's hard to talk to someone who's not necessarily at the same level, and so there are still some there are rules that are maybe a little bit different than what we could see in North America. It's still very, very possible to do business. It's just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit more traditional style, perhaps, in some senses.
I would
Karen,
say.
Karen or Nicolas, anything that we should be? Let's start with Karen. What do you think in Spain and Portugal? Any quick thoughts on business culture we should be aware of?
So when Edith was talking, I was nodding because, of course, I agree with everything she said, and it all applies. So maybe it's not Italy specifically, these relationships. Maybe it's Southern Europe as a whole. Certainly it's true in both Portugal and Europe. Relationships are very important. Things may take time. Business is done maybe in a slightly different way. I think I would underscore that it's really important to look at maybe potentially having a partner, because although CETA has eliminated on paper, there may not be a barrier, but a cultural difference, maybe Canadians don't quite understand a nuance. And so having a local partner can really help with that. And then there are like the obvious cultural differences that pop to mind. When we try to sell lobster here, we don't sell it with butter. We sell it paella style because people eat rice with lobster. They don't eat butter with lobster. So, these are all things that we can help with. It's certainly true that culture is very important. It's also part of what makes it a really sort of charming and beautiful thing to sell in Spain and in Southern Europe. I think it's like they're very appealing places for Canadians. They're very opening and welcoming to us. It's a warm culture. I know you've heard about this, of course, because it's a bit of a stereotype, but it's also true and it's positive. So I think there's a lot of positive cultural aspects going on there.
That's terrific. Thanks so much, Nicolas. Anything to add?
I would just echo most of what has been mentioned. France can have long development cycles, so you need to be patient. Lots of very large groups are still family owned, so decision is taken at the top, which is not something that we're always used to. So we need to work on relationship, and to build and to develop those relationships, you need to be committed. You need to be coming very often to the market and to develop those over time. But that's the beauty of Europe. So we just wait for you, being in Spain, being in Italy, being in Portugal or France. We're just waiting for you.
Well, I think that might be a really great way to end. We are just at the end of our time, and so I think that the team is waiting for you. They are looking forward to working with you, and their teams are excited to show you all of the opportunities and to help you explore the market. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your market insights to all my senior trade commissioner colleagues here. It's been great to see you.